Hello and welcome to another episode of the Unwanted Opinions podcast. Jay and I are back here recording on a Wednesday. It is July 29th, about 5 o'clock Eastern time. Going to hit you guys with some of the latest players opting out of this upcoming NFL season. There was also a huge trade last week after Jay and I did, or actually I believe it was early this week. Jamal Adams got traded to the Seahawks. May have been over the weekend. Whatever day it was, really. Jay and I haven't got a chance to talk about that, so we'll talk about it. Joey Bosa from the Chargers just got paid, so we'll also give our thoughts on that contract. And then at the end, we'll just briefly run through what's happening in this NBA bubble. Got some actual games that mean something tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, the seeding game, so we'll briefly touch on that. But first, Jay, how are you today, man?
I'm good now. I told you before we got on the pod I was ready to rip heads off this morning.
Yeah. Jay had a stressful day at work. So
I think I didn't realize how stressed I was until like at lunch I put a piece of gum in my mouth and I started chewing it and my jaws hurt really bad. And the only thing I could think of is like I was grinding my teeth in the morning.
Were you angrily chewing?
No, I just think I was like grinding my teeth all morning, pissed off. That's the only conclusion I could come up with.
Yeah, that's a good possibility. But you're off now, man.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
And we got football to talk about.
Yeah, we do. So let's just start with a lot of these players opting out of the season. So over the past 2-3 days, we've seen a lot of players opt out, and I mean there's some high quality guys that are opting out of this upcoming season. I mean, most notably, I think Dante Hightower, Pat Chung, Marcus Cannon. I mean, a lot of like 6 players from the Patriots have done it so far. I know Michael Pierce for the Vikings, they just signed him to a pretty good contract this offseason.
That's a big loss.
I think, I mean, in the 3-year, $27 million deal, he was going to fill in for, I can't remember who the Vikings had just lost, who he was replacing on the defensive line. Yeah, there you go. Star Lotulelei for the Bills. He's sitting out, and he was a big piece in the Bills' defense last year. Eddie Goldman from the Bears. I mean, Marquise Godwin for the Eagles, that they just signed him as a receiver to help out because you saw all the receiver issues that they had.
Another receiver, Devin Funchess for the Packers.
Yeah, so, I mean, you're just going to keep getting these names day in and day out, and a lot of them, they're prioritizing safety and their family, and because you just don't know. I mean, it's because you see what's happening with baseball, how the Marlins, there was an outbreak within the team, and they already had to postpone games, and they postponed the Phillies and the Yankees because the Marlins had just had a series against them, and they were like, well, we can't try to infect all these teams, so that got postponed. Luckily, the Phillies had 0 positive tests after they played the Marlins, but I think they're going to keep doing that daily because it can lay dormant in you for a few days before you test positive, but that is going to continue to be the problem with these teams, and they're playing in their own home markets. They're staying in hotels. They're flying on jets to and from games where you're not self-isolating. You're not quarantining like other leagues are doing it, like Major League Soccer, the NBA, how they're doing it. And you can't do it. They just don't have the facilities to harness all these NFL teams or Major League Baseball teams. You just can't. And I get it why these guys are opting out, but it sucks because it's just going to be a domino effect, and we're just going to keep continuing to see players opt out of this season, I'm afraid.
I think you might be onto something there. Have you seen the pay structure for how they're getting paid if they opt out?
No, I know that it doesn't count against the team's salary cap.
So they basically, if you are considered, I don't even know who gets to be the judge of this, but if you're a high risk, you get $350,000 stipend no matter what if you sit out. If you are what they consider low risk and you're just kind of doing it to keep yourself safe and you don't want to be around it and you choose to opt out, you still get $150,000 stipend. But the thing with this is it counts towards a contract year. So if you have 1 year left on your deal and you sit out, you are going to be a free agent when you come back. So I want to know how that's going to play into it, where I don't really know anybody off the top of my head that like has 1 year left on their deal with their team, and maybe they don't want to risk being hurt,
Dak
and
Prescott.
they want to leave the team and go into free agency healthy next year. Maybe they choose to sit out and say it's because of COVID. They come back the following year and they are a free agent. Dak Prescott's one of them. Only problem with that is he'd be turning down a lot of money on a franchise tag.
I understand, and he may not get that much money guaranteed again. I mean, I'm not saying that he isn't deserving of it, but there's that chance. I mean, I don't know who it was. One of the corners from Virginia Tech, who is a highly touted prospect coming to the NFL draft, he's opting out of the college football season and said he's just going to train to turn pro next year. So you're going to see it a lot in college sports if they're even if there are college sports. I'm not sure that they're going to be, because there's no money involved for these players at all. But that's not what we're talking about. So that's just a whole nother avenue that I'm not prepared to go down right now.
Here you go, Nick. We just got an alert 1 minute ago. Damian Williams of the Chiefs is going to opt out.
There you go. I mean,
that leaves Clyde Edwards-Helaire is basically the only back on the squad now for the Chiefs.
I mean, and Damian Williams is a guy who I believe only has 1 year left on his deal. And so
that's the position I was actually the most curious about. Is I could see more running backs starting to opt out because they're
like a
probably
Dalvin Cook,
the most likely position to get hurt. They have the shortest lifespan. Yeah, they don't want to risk it. They're a lot of guys when they're on their rookie deals are playing for cheap, so they're wanting to go into that second contract healthy. Why risk it? Collect your $150,000 this year, go into next year fully healthy.
That's a great question. And yeah, like I meant, a Dalvin Cook who wants a new deal. Alvin Kamara wants a new deal. Actually, I think he just got paid. But I'm just saying, like, guys like that where exactly you're one hit away from never playing again. I mean, that happens all the time. But these are just a lot different circumstances this year. Because
I thought about Dalvin Cook earlier this morning. I was thinking about this topic today, but he has 2 years left on his deal. I know he wants a new deal, but even if he were to sit out this year, he's not going to become a free agent.
And he just wants that long-term security like everybody does. I get it, but
I mean, shit, $150,000. I wonder how much less that is than he's making on his rookie deal this year.
I'm sure it's still substantial because he was a second-round pick. So, I mean, I think he's at least a few million. And
usually the rookies make the most money on the back end of their contract.
True. And I mean, $150,000 is a lot of money for you and I, but we also don't have humongous houses and $100,000 cars
built up
and
that cost so much.
Exactly. They're used to these types of things, and their bills probably outweigh the average person by a couple $100,000 a month, if I had to guess.
Probably.
And so, I mean, you saw it with this. You got to compare some of these sports a little bit because a lot of the players in the NBA were like, we haven't made a lot of the money like some of these stars do. So some of these stars were fine if they sit out because they've made all this money throughout their career. Like a guy like, for example, Tom Brady, he's made so much money that he could just opt out and it wouldn't affect his bank account. But like guys trying to make the roster or guys who are like a Dalvin Cook, like a Dak Prescott, are trying to earn those contracts, they got to show up because they want that long, because they got to be able to take care of themselves, their family, whoever. So you need every last chance you can get. And especially this year, it's just weird because you're going from 80 directly to 53. The cuts, you're not going through the 75 cut, the 60 cut, whatever all those numbers are throughout the preseason training camp. You basically have one shot to make the team. And there'll be other chances if somebody gets hurt or opts out because of COVID, but then that just gives somebody else a better opportunity to try and make a team and make money for themselves. So it's just going to be, it's weird because, I mean, everything's weird right now. The whole world is weird, but it's affecting sports. And there's actually more players opting out than I thought there was going to be.
I agree. And you're exactly right. And I believe, like you said earlier, you're going to see quite a few more.
Yeah. And I'm just waiting for, to right now, I think Dante Hightower is like the biggest name player to opt out, to my knowledge. Really,
I would say him, Michael Pierce, and now Damian Williams. I would say those three are probably the biggest.
Yeah,
and actually Patrick Chung you can throw in there too. Two guys. From
you could probably say all the Patriot players just because they're on TV so much and everybody really knows their names because they're always on Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football.
But I would agree with you. Hightower's the biggest name.
Yeah, I mean he's a main component in 3 Super Bowl teams for one of the best defenses in the league. Like I said, if you don't love them, you hate them. The Patriots, that's how it is with them. There's no middle ground really. You love them or hate them. But
Yeah, and Damian Williams isn't a star, but he had a big portion in the team that won the Super Bowl last
he was
year.
a
He
star
had a
in the
big
Super
hand in
Bowl.
that. So that's
He was
a
amazing.
big deal.
It is a big deal. It's all a big deal. And we're going to see, I think they had another 21 positive tests after another go around, but you and I were texting about it the other day. I don't know how many players they had pulled or had tested and only 21 positive. I mean, it may be a few hundred, but if you're bringing 80 players to camp, I mean, and the coaches and everything.
Over 32 teams and only 21 test positive.
Yeah, there's no way
and
that was all teams.
It's very early to be catching it. You get tested positive now, you have plenty of time to quarantine, and then training camp start. I mean, the first game of the season isn't until September.
Yeah. But, I mean, and I'll bring it up again about baseball, about the Marlins. I mean, in September or October, this clearly isn't going away anytime soon, this coronavirus. So, I mean, what's going to happen if 16 players on your team test positive? Are they going to shut that whole team down? Are they going to cancel that lone game for the weekend? What does that do for, because they really don't have much time to make these games up. It's not like they can just say, okay, we'll make this up on Tuesday. It's not like that. It's not like baseball where you could have a doubleheader, because I saw a few people saying, oh, well, the baseball could just make it up with doubleheaders. That's true, but that's like the only sport that can do that. Football can't do that. You can't play 2 games in 1 day. You can barely play 2 games in 4 days just because of the toll it takes on these players' bodies. You see everybody pissed off when they have to go from Sunday to Thursday night game. The players hate that. So I just don't know. I would assume the NFL is going to learn from MLB, and they'll try and have a plan in place. I'm just not sure what's going to happen if there's an outbreak on a team.
That'll be very interesting to see.
I know they're extending
really hope that doesn't happen.
your practice squad from 8 to 16 players. But again, like I mentioned, if you have, just say you have 10 players test positive on your team, there's no way they're going to allow that team to play that Sunday if you get these tests back on like a Thursday or Friday. Because, again, it can lay doormat in somebody for a while, and then you go affect the Chiefs are playing the Eagles or something, and then you're up close. There's so much human-to-human contact, and that's, they say, how you spread it the easiest. I mean, you can affect the entire offensive, defensive line, linebackers, whoever. It's interesting, man, and I know I keep saying that I'm very optimistic about this season happening. It's just going to be hard. It's going to be really hard to do.
Yes, it is. But they have a couple of things working in their favor. One, the amount of money they're spending on testing. 2, they still have over a month before the season gets here, so they'll be able to see how the NBA bubble worked, how MLB's handling the COVID crisis, how the UFC did their thing, how NASCAR was handling their people, how college football is college football and NFL kind of go hand in hand because they have about the same start time. But they have a lot of things they can look at and follow and do better, do worse, whatever, over multiple sports over a month's period of time before they actually have their season start. So I don't know what their plan is, but I'm hoping they're paying extra attention to everything going on around them sports-wise and pull little bits and pieces of every sporting event going on right now and come up with the best plan they can.
Yeah. And, I mean, you have to also, as a player, you really have to be more careful of everything. I mean, really, I think just honestly, from what we're saying, that numbers still spiking and going up and not really going down. Just all of humanity just has to be more careful and compliant with the rules and regulations and everything. But as a player, you just want to obviously be safe for your family and yourself, but I mean, your teammates as well and your coaching staff and things like that. So you have to be very weary of where you go and what you do outside of being in the facility of what you're doing outside of work. I mean, because it's a job for these guys. It's their job. So I don't know. It's just
we'll keep talking about it until shit happens.
I'm going to be extremely devastated if we don't have football.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I am always going to be optimistic because I'm just an optimistic person. I always try and look at the bright side of things, but there comes a time where you just do have to look at it realistically.
I got plans to be at your place every Sunday to watch these
I know.
damn games, so they better happen.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I would, and I love going to sporting events. I'm a person that likes to go to an actual football game or an NBA game.
Be in the stadium, be around fans.
Yeah, I love going to a baseball game, anything. I mean, I was just a sports fanatic, man. So we need it. All right, let's move on from that. Let's just go real quick to Joey Bosa, who just got paid a 5-year, $135 million extension, which includes 78 fully guaranteed at signing. And on top of that, 102 is officially guaranteed. So he gets $78 million that minute he signs that contract, Jay.
Isn't that wild to think, like, once I take this 68-cent pen, mark my name that takes all of 2 seconds to sign on this piece of paper that costs another 4 cents, I'm going to get a check for $78 million.
Yeah, you just see that, or it's a direct deposit just from Dean Spanos' account to Joey Bosa's account. $78 million, there you go. Boom.
It's not going to happen, but he could literally sign that piece of paper. They hand him a check saying, here's $78 million. He could turn around, look at the owner in his eye, say, fuck you, I quit. Take that $78 million, cash it in, never have to play another down.
There may be a clause in the contract that says you can't just retire tomorrow.
I don't know. I think fully guaranteed at signing, I think he can do whatever you want.
He might be able to. And he may just not get that additional, what is that, $34 million on top. Yeah.
That's just wild.
But, yeah.
You know how I feel about Joey Bosa, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's your Ohio State guy. I mean, I think he's tremendous. Is he the best defensive player in the league? No, but, I mean, he consistently...
Just next in line.
Exactly. That's just how it goes. I mean, it's the rate. I mean, he's a great pass rusher. That's a person that you want on your team a lot. He's a hard worker. The only really the only thing negative about him is that he's had a few injuries over his career. And if he can stay healthy, I mean, he's a hard worker, great character guy. He's a prime position of what you need to go get that quarterback. So, I mean,
if you want to just see what he can do, go turn on the Buffalo Bill game 2 years ago when Nate Peterman was in there, and I think he himself caused like 3 or 4 interceptions where he was hitting the quarterback as he was being thrown.
Jared Veldheer, I think it was Jared Veldheer, the offensive tackle. I think he used to at least play for the Broncos. I'm not sure if he still does, but he's played for Oakland and Arizona. He goes after Adam Schefter tweeted this out. He responded to the tweet and said, "Now I don't feel as bad for giving up the sack against him last year."
Yeah, I mean the dude's a technician. He's not like a freak like Myles Garrett in a straight line 40 times speed, but he can get to the quarterback just as fast with his quickness, his power, his technique with his hands. He's just, to me, one of the best defensive ends in the game. He can play the run, he can play the pass. He's just got to stay on the field because when he's on the field, he's San Diego's best defensive player. Outside, you could argue Derwin James just because of his versatility, and he's so good.
Yeah.
But those two right there are cornerstones of that defense going forward. You have to lock those two down.
I agree. And, I mean, hats off to him. I'm always for players getting their money. I was just really surprised that the Chargers, a franchise that's known to not really do this, pay.
They're kind of cheap.
They're very cheap. They're cheap with everything. They're cheap with players. They're cheap with coaching staff. They're cheap. I think Anthony Lynn's the lowest paid coach in all of football. They don't even own their own stadium, so they just rent to play in the Rams' new stadium that Kroenke built. So that was the only thing that really surprised me.
Like no one had been talking about, are they going to extend Joey Bosa or what's going to go on with Joey Bosa's future in LA, but hats off to them for getting it done early because you just saw Myles Garrett get his deal. Mm-hmm. Now Joey Bosa got his deal. Aaron Donald got paid a few years ago. Khalil Mack's big deal because the guy's coming up. Like I can almost bet money if Chase Young lives up to 3/4 of what he's projected to be, his number will blow Joey Bosa's out of the water when he gets his second contract.
Probably. But you said something about it being weird. I mean, if it does give you some ray of hope the NFL, the owners, I think, are pretty confident that they're going to do everything they can to make sure the season happens, because there was a couple weeks ago when the deadline was to extend your tagged players. I mean, you saw a lot of people get paid, and I mean, these owners, a lot of them are billionaire owners, so yes, they have a lot of money, but they're not just going to give their money to these players if they don't think they're still going to make a lot of money from TV contracts or ticket sales or whatever it may be. So if that does show a little ray of hope, I'm taking it as that they're still willing to give their good players a lot of money in these contracts, especially this guaranteed money. I mean, because yeah,
especially in the upcoming year when it's not guaranteed that there's going to be football.
Exactly.
So they must know a little more than we do, or they're, like you said, very optimistic that the season's going to play out, because there's a good chance that the salary cap takes a hit because of the amount of money they're going to be losing from the fans in the stadium. So these owners still willing to pay their players this upcoming season. That's a very good point. Does show that they have a lot of optimism about this upcoming year still happening.
Yeah. I think I saw somewhere that it said ticket sales do bring in about 40% of the team revenue.
That's a lot of damn
for the
money.
year.
You're talking billions.
That's a ton of money, man. That's just it's going to be, and I know if that happens and they're still not allowed to have fans, a majority of their money, yes, does come from TV contracts. I mean, and they get a lot of money to show these games
sales
on national television. Merchandise sales, exactly. So they're still going to get, because people are still going to buy T-shirts and jerseys and hats, and I mean, I don't think that'll stop for sure. But I mean, that's just a small portion of what it is. But that's how I'm taking it. That I'm just, like I said, I'm optimistic, Jay. So I'm looking at every little thing that happens as a sign of what's good to come.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay. Last but not least in this NFL little run through that we've got here, Jamal Adams, I believe wasn't it Sunday? It might have been Saturday or Sunday when he officially got traded.
I don't remember what day it was.
It was over the weekend because I was actually at a Kittle's furniture outlet. It was Saturday then. Yes. Okay. That's how I remember it. But the Seahawks traded for Jamal Adams and also got a 2022 fourth-round pick. The Jets get the 2021, 2022 first-round picks, a 2021 third-round pick, and Bradley McDougald. And I want to hear your take on it first, Jay, because I just, you go first.
I don't mind it. I like the idea of having proven players. You're not trading first-round picks for a 32-year-old proven player. You're trading for someone who already looks to be an all-pro safety, one of the best safeties in the league. He's young. He can do a lot of stuff. I think the Jets boxed him in as like all he can do is be a box safety, and I don't think that's true. If you go watch the LSU tape, he can defend the pass. He can play the run. I really like him coming out of college. I think he's going to fit extremely well in Seattle's defense. I don't think they overpaid for him. I see all this stuff about they gave up way too much for a safety. One, I think safety's so undervalued in the league. It's not even funny not even because I play the position. I know how vital the safety position is to a defense. And if you don't believe me, look at what's going on in the NFL. All these underpaid safeties, right? Look at all the best teams. So Kansas City, who just won the Super Bowl, their defense was ass 2 years ago. They were relying on their historically good offense. This past season, their defense was significantly improved. And it's not only because Chris Jones came back. They signed the Honey Badger, and he played a big role in that defense. You look at Baltimore, who has one of the best defenses in the league. They lost C.J. Mosley to the Jets. So they should be a worse defense, but yet they go get Earl Thomas, one of the better safeties, and you could argue they were the best defense in the league. You look at Pittsburgh. Their defense was, I would say, slightly above average, and they also had a badass offense when Big Ben was healthy. Well, last year, again, you could argue one of the best, if not the best defense, took them to like 8-8 with Duck Hodges and all this shit after they trade for Minka Fitzpatrick, who significantly improves their defense. So my point is, I believe safety is very undervalued in the NFL. You hear a lot of people, I've heard a ton of the analysts say, how could you give up so much for a safety? And I'm like, dudes, look at the top safeties in the league and how good the defenses are that they're on. So on top of that, I heard Pete Carroll defend himself and say, I don't understand your guys' logic. I could never, if I were to want to trade up in the draft to get an unproven Jamal Adams who has never played it down, I'm going to have to give up 2 firsts, a third, and another player. I'm giving that up for a guy that I know has all pro potential, going to fit in seamlessly on this defense, make our team better. And we already have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and they're trying to win right now. I see it as a win-win for both teams because there's no way Jamal Adams is going back to the Jets this year after all the shit he talked about the owner and the coach, and he basically forced his way out of there. So everyone knows Jamal Adams is on the trade block, so you got to give up whatever for him. I get that. But, I mean, this is what the Bears gave up for Khalil Mack, and he immediately made the Bears defense way better.
Yeah.
So you can say they overpaid for him. The Seahawks usually blow their first-round picks anyways on guys like I know Rashad Penny. He was not worth the first-round pick. He's definitely not lived up to first-round hype. Collier, who they spent a first-rounder on last year, hasn't done anything up to this point. They usually make their money on the back end of the defense. So they've whiffed on a few of their first-rounders anyways, and now you're getting an all-star safety to help that defense out. I'm all for it. The back end of their defense was their biggest problem anyway. Now you go get you bring Jadeveon Clowney back, and I think you got to be one of the Super Bowl favorites. And on top of that, I think there's a big reason why they went and got Jamal Adams, because you're playing to win your division first, then make the playoffs and win that way. So the easiest way into the playoffs is by winning your division. You win your division, you're automatically in the playoffs. Who's the team that they have the biggest problem with in their division? It's San Francisco, the team that was in the Super Bowl last year. Who's their biggest matchup nightmare on offense? George Kittle. Now you have a safety that can play with George Kittle defensively, and it allows you to do so much more. So all around, I love it for the Seahawks, and I actually like it for the Jets. I think they got a lot of compensation for somebody that everyone knew was not going to be on the team to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things, obviously, that you think about it. So I'll start with Seattle's perspective, and I'm on board for it as well. I love Jamal Adams. I think he's a phenomenal player. It kind of annoyed me, just all the stuff that he felt he was disrespected because his name was in some trade rumors, and that just happens. It happens in every sport unless you're like fucking LeBron James or, I mean, even Tom Brady. I mean, the 49ers called about Tom Brady, and I mean, they said no, but I mean, their names, all these players' names just get thrown into deals. So that was the only thing I've ever had negative to say about Jamal Adams. I thought he was being a little bit of a diva when he was saying, respect me, pay me, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, like you said, he forced his way out. He was gone. Good. Start over. Whatever. I love it for Seattle because they're in win-now mode, like you talked about. They have, exactly, San Francisco is the team that they need to get past in their division. San Francisco has the best tight end in the league, and they have arguably the greatest run game in the league, maybe behind Baltimore. But any running back they put in that system. And Jamal Adams isn't just a safety. I mean, he lines up both safety positions. He lines up at linebacker. He lines up on the edge. You can move him all around. And in that Seattle scheme, what they still do, what they've done since Pete Carroll got there, and I think, 2009 or 10, whatever year it was, they've run the same exact defense. And the perfect position for it is safety in that cover 3 scheme. And Jamal Adams arguably is the greatest safety in the league currently. He's an all-pro level guy, multiple-time Pro Bowler. You can do whatever with him. And yeah, the Jets and the Seahawks are just in 2 different stages right now. The Seahawks are in win-now mode. The Jets are trying to rebuild, get more talent around Sam Darnold, because before Joe Douglas, I can't even think of the GM before him, but I mean, he just made horrendous picks. Yes, Mike McCagnon. He just made awful picks, put the Jets in a really bad spell. They couldn't do anything. They made terrible picks all the time. Their offense stinks. Their defense stinks. And they just lost their best player. So, but this comes down to what the Jets make of these picks. Because you mentioned Khalil Mack, and the 2 first-round picks that the Raiders got for Khalil Mack, they've turned it into Jonathan Abram and I believe Damon Arnett. I believe those are the 2 guys that they have turned Khalil Mack into. Now, would you rather still have Khalil Mack or those 2 guys for the next 4 to 5 years? The answer is probably Khalil Mack. So, unless the Jets just blow these 2 picks out of the water, which, mind you, will be late round, first round picks, because the Seahawks with Russell Wilson will win less than probably no more than 10 games a year. I mean, they'll probably at least go 10-6 for the next 2 to 3 years. So your picks are in the high 20s. So you just got to absolutely nail these picks, because it all just comes down to what you do next. And in that perspective, the Seahawks probably win this trade because you're getting the immediate satisfaction of already an established fantastic player. It's not like he's just an average guy. Like you mentioned, Jay, what Pete Carroll said about having to trade up to go get a player like this in the draft, you're giving up this compensation anyways. So why wouldn't you do it?
Exactly, for an unproven player.
Yeah, so why wouldn't you do it for a guy who's proven to be one of the best safeties in the league? I mean, he's up
already
there
and only like 25.
with Minka and Tyrann Mathieu, and Earl Thomas is the best safety in the league. So I like it more for Seattle, because Jets, it's just what you do next. Because
you heard everyone make the same argument when the Steelers traded for Minka. Now everyone looks stupid for
exactly. And we were always on board with that Minka trade, because
I think it's going to be the same thing with this. I think you're about to see Seattle's defense go to a whole new level, and them as a team, because the more stars you can get around Russell Wilson, who already carries the team on his back, and just alleviate some of the pressure. You saw how well he played against San Francisco last year without him. So,
I mean, they beat San Francisco once, and they were within a half inch of beating them twice and becoming the division winner.
I'm taking Seattle to win the division.
I think this puts Seattle over the top. I really do. I really think they need to bring back Jadeveon Clowney and just keep their pass rush. I've said this for a couple weeks now, but I think they really need to bring him back, because this shows they're like going all in for these next couple years. I think if
they bring back Jadeveon Clowney, they would be my Super Bowl pick out of the NFC.
I think I probably would have him too, because that shores up their two biggest needs that they had, because you saw how dramatically their defense changed even when they brought in a guy like Quandre Diggs, and he's a good player, but he's not on Jamal Adams' level.
No, I agree.
We were also texting about this on Saturday with another one of our buddies about how I've defended Adam Gase a lot, and I do believe he is a good offensive mind, but he is a terrible head coach. He cannot get along with anybody who wants to speak up or say things. Like Jamal Adams, a very vocal guy. He's very passionate, and Adam Gase just clashes with those types of players. And
yeah, you were right. He's way better as a coordinator.
Yes, he should stay a coordinator, because over his time in the NFL, the only backing he's ever got is from Peyton Manning. And that's why he's gotten a lot of these jobs, because Peyton Manning is who he is, and he's backed Adam Gase. So that's carried a lot of weight. But now Adam Gase is kind of making everybody, including myself, look a little stupid, because we've defended him a lot, and I'm done defending him. I don't think he can handle being a head coach. He can't handle that extra pressure of controlling a locker room or working with players, because you have to have a relationship with your players to be a successful organization. Because, I mean, if, say for a fact that Adam Gase was on Jamal Adams' side, and it was the front office that was saying, oh, we might trade him or things like that, at least you have your head coach who's backing you, so you want to go play for him on the field, and then everyone else in the locker room sees what example you're setting as the head coach, saying, if the GM doesn't like us, we'll at least want to go play for the head coach. But if no one's backing you or backing your players, what does that say about the Jets organization? No one will go want to play there, because if they're not paying, I saw somebody else say, if they don't want to pay Jamal Adams, who do they want to pay?
Yeah, I mean, you could leave it at that, because that's perfectly worded. Who? Sam Darnold, just because he keeps his mouth shut and he's quarterback.
Well, and because they'll franchise tag him and he won't be able to leave, even if he doesn't want to play there.
Yeah.
So, but I love it for Seattle. I like you said, I've seen a lot of people hate it for the Seahawks. I absolutely love it for them.
And like I said, if they can just get, and this isn't even me saying they have to bring Clowney back in order for them to be my Super Bowl favorite coming out of the NFC.
They might not.
Because I still might pick them to make it to the Super Bowl in the NFC over all the other guys, even without Clowney.
I agree. I just think this sets them up really well. I have to, obviously we'll see what comes of people opting in or opting out if some key players on the Seahawks decide to opt out. But again, I mean, if they've got Russell Wilson, they've got a chance in every single game that they're in.
Exactly. And you just got him a superstar on defense.
I saw this. Somebody tweeted this, was like they've improved. They have a better offensive line now. They've actually got some receivers in Lockett and Metcalf for him to throw to. It looks like they've got the 3 running back system that they really like to do. They got Jamal Adams now. Their pass rush is upgraded.
Still have Bobby Wagner out.
They need to unleash Russell Wilson. Brian Schottenheimer and Pete Carroll need to stop fucking around and let this guy go win them games, because they hold him back for 3 quarters and then just have to have him make some magic in the 4th quarter.
We've harped on this since the playoff game against the Cowboys 2 or 3 years ago.
It's been more than that, but yeah, exactly. That was a prime example, and they did it against Green Bay in the playoffs too, because you saw in the second half when they went down 24-0, Russell Wilson almost single-handedly brought them back and won that game for them. And had he been able to do a little bit more with the offense in the first half, they probably wouldn't have found themselves in that pickle.
Yeah. Yep, I'm with you.
I'm not even a Seahawks fan. I love Russell Wilson. I could give a shit less if they win a game or not, unless they're playing like somebody I hate, or I'm betting on them or something. But just release the man. Let him do his thing. Damn.
I agree. Russell's one of my favorite players in the league.
God. But again, so we're both on board. We both really like it for the Seahawks. And
don't get me wrong, I like it for the Jets too.
I like it for the Jets too, but exactly, it's what they do next. They have to capitalize on letting go of an all-pro player. They have to replace him with 2 Pro Bowl level players at least to say that they got an even compensation for this. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Okay. All right. That'll do it for our NFL stuff. Quickly, Jay and I just wanted to briefly just kind of run through what's going on with the NBA. It was just announced today, actually, that they had their last round of tests were all negative again. So there you go. Since we've had players in the bubble, there's been no positive tests inside, which is absolutely phenomenal. The NBA is doing so far so good. Everything's right. I'm about 89% sure that we're going to be a champion's going to be crowned in October, and hopefully everything goes just as planned, but I really think they can do it. I've always been kind of on board for what they're doing. So, but we actually have meaningful games on tomorrow and Friday, and for the 8 seeded games for all these 22 teams. It's happening, man. It's here.
Finally here. I know we keep saying finally on the podcast because dates are announced. They keep getting announced, and we get closer and closer to the games, but this is it. It's finally here. It's happening tomorrow.
Yeah. We got Jazz and Pelicans and Clippers and Lakers. Zion's back. So Zion, I believe he's going to play because I saw him practicing today. So I think he's going to be full go tomorrow. Well, I say full go. I don't know what this first game is going to look like with these 4 teams. It could be a little clunky because, especially with the Clippers don't have Lou Will because he wanted to go to a strip club. And they don't have Montrezl Harrell, who's still not back because he's tending to a personal matter. So whatever that is, I'll best wishes to him and his family. But they don't have 2 of their 4 best players. The Clippers do.
And I don't think the Lakers are going to be too concerned about winning this game, in all honesty. I know they kind of want to make a statement. I wouldn't be surprised
if LeBron and AD and Kawhi and Paul George, for that fact, all 4 of those stars don't go over 30 minutes for this first game.
Agreed. And I see it from both sides.
Yeah.
Clippers don't want to get their fucking guys hurt.
No.
They got some guys missing. And the Lakers, when Avery Bradley decided he's not going to be there, and Rondo got hurt, they brought in Waiters and J.R. Smith, so they're trying to work them. They should be taking this time right. They have such a big lead on the Clippers on getting the 1 seed that they need to take this time and work on roster rotations and who can be on the floor at the same time and what's going to be a good combo going down when they actually get into the playoffs, and just find sets on the court that work for them, because it doesn't matter if they lose a couple games here, because they have what,
5.5 game lead over the Clippers. So unless they lose all 8 games and the Clippers win all 8, I don't think they're going to. And really, doesn't matter. There's no home court unless you're just trying to avoid somebody in the seeding and wherever that is. If you want to avoid, I don't know if you want to avoid the Rockets in round 2, which I think probably the Lakers and the Clippers probably wouldn't want to see them in round 2, just because the Rockets are one of those teams where you saw it I think last night, James Harden had like 30 points in the first half and he made like 7 threes. But anyways, that's just it. I don't think any of these first couple games, I think they're going to be a little clunky, and because nobody's played in 4 months an actual meaningful game. You've seen these scrimmages, but again, these scrimmages don't count for points. They don't count for wins. They don't count for losses. So we'll see. But I couldn't be more excited that it's actually happening. It's like I'll be just glued to the TV tomorrow night.
Agreed.
But so we'll definitely next week, once these games go, we've seen a few things. Jay and I'll talk about how everything looks and what goes on. And I don't know when they're going to announce all these awards, because every person who votes on the awards had to submit everything yesterday for All-NBA, all the awards that Jay and I ran through. You heard our picks. If you didn't, go back and check that last podcast out, because Jay and I did the 6 major awards. We didn't do All-NBA or anything like that, but did all those major awards. So we'll see what happens.
Couldn't be more pumped.
Yeah. All right. But we will get out of here on that, as always, unless you had anything else to add, Jay.
Nope.
You good?
You're good.
Come. Subscribe to the Unwanted Opinions podcast wherever you find us. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Check us out on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Unwanted Opinions with Nick and Jay. Make sure to rate, subscribe, and review on Apple Podcasts. Leave us comments on our YouTube page. You can email us, unwantedopinionspodcast@gmail.com. If you got questions, comments, anything, we'd love to answer questions on here or respond on Twitter or whatever. We'll do it all.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time.
Until next time.